Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar, which is Adapting Content Quickly for Delivering Online. I'm Sally Betts, and today I'll be co-delivering with Alistair McNaught and facilitating for us in the chat room and answering questions you might have as we go through. We have Sarah Simons and Vikki Liogier from ETF. Right, so let's see what we're covering today. Our webinar is going to explore how you can quickly take content that you already have and adapt it for use online. I know many of you have been asked to do that. And we're going to look in particular at PowerPoint, as many of you will probably use PowerPoint within your class. So how to turn PowerPoint into a self-learning tool with audio and notes, how to use screen capture software within PowerPoint, and how to combine or use your PowerPoints inside an online tool like Nearpod so that you can create an interactive session that you could deliver either through independent learning or through a meeting room like this, where you actually guide your students through it in a structured way. And we'll be introducing you to the Enhanced Digital Teaching Platform and modules that can help support you to develop your CPD, your Digital Technologies CPD, and the badging process within that to help you evidence your learning, as well as an area where we can show awarded practices, submissions, reflections and resources to share our practice and to discuss it further. I think Vikki's already put a link in the chat pane to the Enhanced Digital Teaching Platform, but we'll look at it later on anyway. So welcome everybody this afternoon. Let's get started. So I think most of you have found the chat pane, but because some of you might be new to using webinar software or might be new to Zoom, let me just explain how to use the two communication tools that we'll be using today within this area. So if you hover your mouse towards the bottom of your screens, you will see a menu appear, and on that menu you will see one item that's called Manage Participants. You need to select that, and that'll show you all the participants in the room. And at the bottom of it, you'll also see that you have various symbols: raise hand, yes, no, go slower, go faster. So raise hand you can use if you've got a question. Let us know there's a question coming in. You could then use the chat pane to type that in. And yes and no often used in answer to questions. If we need to go slower for you, please do let us know, or if you need any support, please let us know in the chat pane. So on that menu bar, if you hover again down to the bottom of the screen, you also need to open up the chat pane, and please do introduce yourself in the chat pane. Lots of you already have. So just to make sure you've all found the participants icons, the yes, no, etc. Could you all select yes for me, just so that we know, and that Alistair and I could use those if we wish to. Great, I can see many of you have already got there. So open up the Manage Participants, and then you'll see those icons, and I can then clear them as well. If you're struggling to find it but you found the chat pane, then just use the chat pane instead and put your answers in there. Thank you. I'm going to clear that now. Thank you very much. And I'm going to get started on the actual webinar. So the first thing we're going to do, or I'm going to do, is to show you how to use audio and video within your PowerPoint, or how to add them to your PowerPoint so that you can use them. Okay, so I'm going to go to slideshow mode. You can see I'm now in a very short session, only 4 slides, and I'm going to go to slideshow mode in PowerPoint. And you might not have noticed this, but this is in Office 365. When you're in slideshow mode, before you go and start your slideshow mode, what you can do is you can put on titles, subtitles, captioning. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to just close my video, because when I close my video, it then disappears from my screen and I can actually operate properly. So if I place the subtitles and put the tick in the box for subtitling, you just see, hopefully the checkbox has come up. I can also set up my subtitling settings. So I can have my spoken language as English and my subtitle language as English. Although, look at the choice of subtitle languages that I've got. A huge choice there. And I'll come back to why that could be important to you in a minute. So if I put this onto from the beginning and I start talking, this presentation will explore shapes and patterns. Spend a few minutes thinking about shapes and what they have in common. So that's how to use closed captions. So when you go into sharing your slideshow mode, you can actually add captions onto it. That could be useful if you're supporting ESOL learners, English for speakers of other language learners, whose first language is not obviously English. You could have your closed captions on when you're presenting and they could actually read in their own language. Now that would work if your group is to one particular language. It wouldn't be quite so easy if it was to others, but you could use it as a translation tool on a one-to-one basis. It could also be used to make quite interesting way of thinking about how you might deliver language classes. Okay, so that was the subtitles and their use. And I'm now going to show you how you could actually add audio and put in video and save as video in PowerPoint. So let's start by adding some audio. So if I go to Insert, one of the options on the menu bar is audio. And if I select that, I have two choices. I can go and find some audio file that's already on my PC, or I can directly audio record onto this particular slide. If I select direct recording, I can give it a name and I use the record icon, the red button, to start my recording. So this presentation will explore shapes and patterns. Stop it with the square button, listen to it, replay it, make sure it's okay. If you're happy with it, then save it onto the slide. And you can see that I've got a recording there. So that will come up when they come through and they can listen to the recording. So that records onto one particular slide and I'm going to delete that. I'm just going to show you video before I show you how you can record across your whole presentation. So for video, very similar process. If I want to insert a video, I can insert from an online video or I can insert from a video from my PC. I strongly recommend if you're going to put video into PowerPoints that you actually upload them to a repository online first, something like YouTube, and access them from there. And to access a YouTube video, simply select the online version and then look for your video online. So here's a video that I want online. I say share and I copy the link on there. I come back into the right PowerPoint hopefully and I paste it into the box and then select insert. So the next thing I might want to do is to record audio right across my 4 slides. To do this, you go to slideshow mode and we're going to use the option to record slideshow. You wouldn't record onto individual slides, you're just going to record across the whole of your presentation using this option. So I select record slideshow and then I use the record button up here to actually record. So I'll just put a couple of slides, recording on a couple of slides. You would actually work the whole way through all of it. So I select record. This presentation will explore shapes and patterns. Spend a few minutes thinking about the shapes and what they have in common, then move to the next slide. When you've finished, you stop and you can replay it and listen to how it sounds. And when you're done, you close the window. You can now see, I only did 2 of the 4 slides, but you can now see that there are loudspeaker icons on those slides.
I'm going to look at some of the other elements, a couple of other elements, and in particular, I want to look at how you can use the different features and functionalities within PowerPoint in order to maximize your students' experience and to minimize barriers for your students. So can I just check, Sally, is my video showing? Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what I'm going to do here, there's a range of things. Sally's shown us the brilliant facility for recording the subtitles, the captions as you speak, and the ability to add in audio, and all of those are great things. And we'll look at the kind of positive implications of all of those, and also a couple of caveats in a minute. But the one thing that I wanted to show as well, and it's very topical here, is how you can use the screen capture video in PowerPoint as well. So you can use screen capture video to create tiny little instructional videos instantly within PowerPoint. And the ways you could use this are enormous. So, for example, you could use it to interpret a graph, to explain how to work a spreadsheet, to show how to solve an equation, how to set up an experiment, with pictures of laboratory equipment. You could look at how to interpret artwork or interpret Shakespeare or poetry, explain a map. There's loads of things that you can do. And it's all based on, from 2016, PowerPoint 2016 onwards, it's all based on the insert button and then the screen recording, as you can see on my screen here. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a quick demo of this, and I'm going to do you a quick lesson on coronavirus. So there's a picture of coronavirus, and I just want to show you how we could quickly turn that into an animated explanatory video. So I'm going to come out of the presentation view. So there is the coronavirus, and I also have open another window with the picture, Pixabay picture. That's an important thing. I'm taking a picture that is copyright free. You've got to be careful about copyright. In the rush to get online, don't go and find you breaking the law in all sorts of ways. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a little clip into here next to this static image. So I'm going to then go insert, screen recording, and I can tab between my different open windows to work out, which window I want to record. I'm going to record this one. So I select the area I want to record, and I get myself a countdown once I've pressed the record button. So I'll have 3 seconds. This is an image of the coronavirus. You'll see it's covered with these spikes. It's a bit like a crown. That's why it's called corona. The spikes of the proteins that latch onto your cells. That's the nasty bit. This is where hand washing comes in. The spikes are embedded in this surface, which is made of a sort of fatty substance, a lipid. Lipids break down with soap. So if you wash with lots of soap, you break down the lipid, all the proteins fall off, and you're safe forever. And then I clicked the stop up there. And now when I go back to my PowerPoint, you'll notice I have this. Let's get rid of the little one. That was the little one earlier. I now have this big picture, which I'll put full screen here in the center of the screen. And when I play this, you'll notice there's a little recording bar, and you may not hear this coming through your because coming through my headphones, it may not come through the speaker, so you probably won't hear the audio, but you will see the mouse moving around. And hopefully you heard a little bit of that. So it's a completely instant way of creating a little bit of instructional material really quickly for your students to use. Now, with doing all these fantastic things, it adds loads of value to loads of people, but do not give and then take away. Don't give with one hand so that your dyslexic students find it, wow, this is brilliant, but your students with hearing impairments or students trying to watch these videos in a place where there's a noisy environment or something, or they haven't got a headset, where they lose out. So giving without taking away is what I want to explore here. How can you give without taking away? So just a couple of quick tips here. So when you add images, well, do add images, that's great. They add enormous value to all sorts of people, but don't assume everyone knows what they mean. You don't have to be blind in order to look at an image and think, what on earth? So make sure you add alternative text or an appropriate description in the notes field. And by the notes field, you can see on the right-hand side of this middle diagram here, where there's the words trends in digital accessibility. That's the bit, that's the field where you can type in information underneath the main slide. It's the most underused feature of PowerPoint. It's the most powerful one from an inclusion perspective. So you could put your information in there. If it's only eye candy, then you can mark it as decorative text. How to do that? Up on the right here, we've got the image. There's if you right click over that image, click on edit alt text, and then you can either type in what that image is showing, if it's an important image, or if it's not described appropriately in the notes field underneath, or there's an option to just mark it as decorative. And that means that if it's only eye candy, somebody accessing your PowerPoint with a screen reader then would just pass over it. They wouldn't be forced to listen to it. Second thing, add audio, but don't assume everyone can listen to it. And again, you don't have to be deaf to have problems with the audio. It could simply be that you haven't got speakers, you haven't got headphones. So again, if you're adding audio, summarize the key points in the notes field, as I've done on that right-hand diagram in the middle, where I've got, in this case, I've described the image. Equally, if I was doing that little coronavirus explanation, I would be describing that in the notes field there. Now, you might think, hold on, this is going to take me loads of extra time, but it isn't necessarily, because if we go to this example, so I've just gone into edit mode again, to describe what I was saying in the coronavirus here, I can click on dictate. The coronavirus is covered with lots of spiky bits, and these are the elements that capture or attach themselves to your cells. So I'll switch that off now. So you can very quickly give students really good quality information in the notes field. And finally, in terms of adding video or screencasts, like we've just been doing, don't assume everyone can listen to them or see them. They will add a lot of value to loads of people, but do make sure you summarize the key points as we've just shown. You could summarize it in the presentation using the, like I've just shown you with the dictate. You can let the subtitling explain it for you. So Sally showed us subtitling already. If you haven't got Office 365 with a built-in subtitling, do it with Google Slides. So here, for example, if I show you an example of using Google Slides, here's one I prepared earlier. If I can find it underneath the Zoom screen, there we are. Right, so this is the same presentation which I've loaded into Google Drive, and from Google Drive I can present. If I present here, start presentation, then you'll see down at the bottom there's the option for turning on captions. So I can now speak, and even though I haven't got the latest version of Office 365 and PowerPoint, I can take a really ancient version of PowerPoint and still give my students the captions, live captioning taking place. It won't be 100% accurate, but it would definitely help a lot of students, perhaps those with language difficulties, as Sally was talking about earlier. So there's two totally different ways of doing that. And finally, you could record your entire presentation like that and upload it to YouTube, like Sally was talking about earlier, getting the audio narration from beginning to end, slide by slide. Or you could do as I've just done with Google Slides. If you upload your presentation to YouTube, if you upload your presentation as a video to YouTube, YouTube can do auto captioning for you, but they may need checking and editing. The key thing is, in all of this, don't exclude people by language level, by making things more complex than they need to be. Don't exclude by the text, by having either so much text on there that it's really hard for people to access, or too little text, one or two iconic images, and people think, well, what on earth is that? Use the notes field so that you can have just a few points on the screen and all the explanation in the notes field. Avoid monocultural medium. What I mean by that is a monoculture of just text, 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 or just as bad, picture, 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 picture with very little text. So mix them up. Avoid monocultural activities where everything's quiz, quiz, quiz. Include other activities like collaboration or like actively creating things. Do provide the kinds of range of things that match different people's strengths, weaknesses, requirements, etc. Used well, PowerPoint is nothing to do with death by PowerPoint. Used well, you can have loads of alternative media for stimulus materials, self-test activities embedded. Sally, I think, is going to show that for mastery learning, collaborative learning, alternative assignments, differentiated resources, brilliant opportunities. Sally, over to you. Do you want to share your screen again?
I do, and I'm going to go and take you to look at something called Nearpod. So I'm going to share that screen. Okay, so what you're seeing at the moment is you're seeing Nearpod, and I've only shown it on half the screen, and I'll explain why in a minute. Okay, so I'm showing you Nearpod in two different views. So on the left-hand side, this is what a teacher sees once they've logged in. And on the right-hand side, I'm showing you what a learner sees when they log in. And what I'm going to do in a minute is I'm going to send you to that site. If you type in nearpod.com/student for me, someone into the chat pane, then you'll take people to this side. But hang on a second before you go, because what I'm going to do is show you, I've got a Nearpod here that we can use to practice with and have a lesson through. So my lesson is called Shapes and Patterns. Some of you will find that quite familiar from this morning. And when I hover over my lesson, it's just one of many on this site, I can choose what type of lesson I want to give. Do I want to deliver a live lesson, or do I want to deliver a student-paced lesson? I want to deliver a live lesson with you in the room now, so I can use the benefits of the virtual classroom, the chat pane. I could allow you to use your microphones. I've got the feedback status as well. But if you wanted learners to do it in their own time, you could give them the student-paced version, which would still give you access to all the reporting information, etc., at the end and how your students have done. So I'm going to turn on the live lesson. When I start my live lesson on this side, I don't want to resume, I want to go right from the beginning. I will get a code in a minute. Here's the code. So your code that you need to enter into the code box is WGLSX, and I'm going to do it as if I was you on the other side as well. So if you can't actually access this, you can watch along as to what's happening. So WGLSX. You type it into the box as a learner and you join. So that's all the learner needs, is the code you give them. Okay, and it asks me for a name. It can be just, your first name. You don't need to put all of your name in there if you don't want. So let's join that session. And you can see the teacher view and the student view are the same. The difference is the teacher can go backwards and forwards. The student is locked onto that screen. So at this point, I can say, oh, great, we're going to have a mini lesson. We're going to have our maths lesson. We're going to look at shapes and patterns. And when I turn the screen, the student's screen turns as well. So what I would like you to do now is I would like you to look at these shapes and to consider what they might have in common. In a minute, I'm going to ask you to actually pop that into the box for me. So think about it. Okay, and I'm starting the activity. So I'm going to start a poll and you'll have 15 seconds to answer the question. So the question is, what do these three shapes have in common? So if you'd all like to answer, you click in the circles or on the things to answer. Once you've answered, you can submit your answer. Oh, I ran out of time. And I've got to wait for the next activity. On the left hand of my screen, if you're flipping backwards and forwards, or if you've separated your screen like mine so that you can see both sides, I can see who scored what or who answered what. So I could now have a discussion about that. If lots of people got it wrong, I could stop what I'm doing at this stage and actually do a bit of teaching at that stage as well. Okay, so the answer to that was all of those things were right. And you might have noticed one of the options was to tessellate. So we're going to now talk about tessellation, and I've got another activity for you. Okay, so this is an open-ended question you need to type in. Name 2 examples of tessellation you might find at home. So click in the box where it says ready to enter your answer and enter your answer. Alistair, I think your sound might still be on.
Sorry.
It's okay. And you've entered your answer, you submit it. So I managed to actually enter that one because I didn't put a timer on that one. So I can see the answers on my screen, on my teacher's screen. I can see those answers coming through. Got a few people that haven't actually answered anything yet, but I'm glad that Dan loves it. Okay, so we've got lots of answers. You're just about to run out of time. I'm going to move the slide on. We've had 76% of you answer the question. I could make a maths lesson based on the charts and the answering as we go. Well done. Lots of unusual answers in there, lots of different answers in there. So great, thank you very much. The pineapple tiles is back again. Okay, so now I'm awaiting your artwork. So now I want you to draw me a shape that you wouldn't use to tile a bathroom. And if you were here this morning, I'm expecting a different shape, but I would like a regular shape. So think of a shape that you wouldn't tile a bathroom with. And submit your answer. Now, if you're looking at my teacher view, I can see that we've all nearly got there. We've nearly drawn something. Excellent. In fact, I'm going to use Dean's to demonstrate something else you can do with that. So when somebody does answer one of the questions, you can actually share it back to everybody. So you can see what Dean drew there. He doesn't want to tile his bathroom with heart shapes. Nor would I want to either. But I could take anybody's. So if you'd ask somebody to do a maths calculation, for example, you could ask them to then talk through how they got there. And you could have already put an image on that screen so that you had to draw over the image to highlight something. And then you could ask somebody to explain why they had done it. Okay, another thing I can do with you is I can share a video. So just like you would share a video in PowerPoint, you can share them in here as well. Okay, and I have a choice. Do I want to play it just on my device or do I want to play it on all your devices? Now, I'm going to say this device only. Okay, so I'm hoping that you did all hear the video. I might not have clicked the share sound of my computer audio before I started.
We didn't hear it.
Could you see the arrow moving?
We could see the arrow moving. We were interpreting it.
That's because both Alistair and I forgot. When you go into Zoom and you want to share the screen, you really need, there's one very small checkbox, I wish it was much bigger, that says share your computer audio or share sound. And you need, if you're going to use video, you need to check that box before you go in. If you forget, you have that problem and you have to come back out of share and then go back in. But you could at least see that the video was playing. So you've now got a quiz question. I can see some of you already answered. Which of these multiplication tables have a pattern? So can you think of whether they have a pattern or not? If you're looking at the left-hand side of my screen, you'll see what other people have answered. You can multi-select on this. So you can pick whichever ones you like. You can change your mind and submit it. So I've just put one in as well. Okay, I'll let people have a few more seconds to have a go at entering if they want to. I can see from my data, again, if my students couldn't see my data, I could then base my next bit of lesson on this. So I can see that 50% of you have got the answer correct, and 40% of us, including me, have got it incorrect, and 10% haven't answered. One of the times multiplication tables that does have a pattern is the 9 times table. So it helps you to easily remember it. So the units go down by 1, the tens go up by 1, and if you add the digits of the answer, they make 9. So I'm going to actually come out of this session now. If you go to the menu at the top of the box on your screen, you can exit the Nearpod. Note on my side, and when you do, note on my side of the screen, when you come back into the room, the Zoom room, I could actually add an activity on the fly if I wanted to into this lesson. I'm not going to do that now. It asks me if I want to resume it later. Do you want to leave the session? Yes, I do. So I've left my session. And what it's done, it's come back in, and I'm going to make this full size now, if I can actually get to the screen. Okay, so you can see I've got lots of Nearpods in here, and I've got lots of Nearpods that other people have created that I've gone and had a look at, and I've downloaded, and I could use these. They've given them to be used. But what I can also do is look at my reports, and as a teacher, that's quite important, especially, and this is very important if the person's learning independently, not at the same time as you. So if I click on reports, I can see my shapes and pattern lesson, and it's been run a number of times. I've had 20 students on this one. If I go into it, I can see participation, correct and incorrect answers, and I can see who scored what on each of those activities. Well done, Alistair, you got 100%, and Ange did. So did Dan, so did Dean. Well done, actually you all did really well. So excellent. So that would inform my future learning, and I've got that. Now while I'm here, I want to just show you briefly how it works. So Nearpod has a free version. That's what I'm using here. Here's one I made earlier, so to speak. But let me just show you right from the beginning. If you're doing it right from the beginning, you can create your lesson with Google Slides. You can create a lesson in Nearpod. I'm not using Google Slides, I'm using Office Slides. So if I go in with lesson in Nearpod, I can start and create my lesson from scratch, but we're trying to adapt existing content. So I can drag and drop a PowerPoint straight into here, upload files, and it will create it. I'm not going to do that because it takes a little while just to convert your slides into images, basically. So I've got my same lesson here, but I haven't added any interaction. Actually, I think I might have added one interaction into it. If I go into edit, you'll see it. So there's my basic PowerPoint presentation. Those are the slides. They've literally converted them to drawings, and I can add activities into this. And I'm just going to briefly show you what the range of things you can do are. So I can add content from various places. I can include some video. So I could bring in a YouTube video. I could bring in a slideshow of images. I can bring in audio. I can bring in a PDF viewer. So that's sort of static content. I can add content from the web. So if I know of a site that I want to bring in, I simply type in its URL. Or I can add an activity. And I've got a whole range of activities I can use. I think the time for climbing is, well, it looks to me as if it's for a younger audience, but I'm sure you could adapt it. It's sort of a bit gamification, and it's getting questions right, and you gradually climb up a hill. You can add open-ended questions that you would then have to look at later and mark, perhaps. Matching pairs, quizzes, Flipgrid, which I'm going to be talking about tomorrow afternoon, which is a great way of recording video answers and saving those on a board. I can have a whiteboard for drawing. I can have a collaborative board like a pin board for putting sticky notes on. I can include a poll, a gap fill in the blanks exercise, or like a pairs memory test. Let's just do something fairly easy. Let's add a draw it one, just so that you can see they're all template based. So you add your instructions. Draw a pentagon, and you choose a background. So you upload a background. If you don't upload a background, it just gives you an empty screen. So that's what I'm going to do, give you an empty screen. And you can see I've got 2 draw-its now, and I could move that anywhere by dragging and dropping it into the right place. A quick look at another activity, such as let's do a poll. I won't fill it in, I'll just show you what it looks like. You can see, very, very simple. Question, answers, add more answers. I can change the settings. So do you want to have multi-select? I can turn that on and save it. I can add a timer into it. I can add some support into it. All right, I won't add that one, but you get the idea. So I'm going to come back in, and I can see there's lots of chat going on, so I might have to look at the chat, but I'm going to come back in and find the PowerPoint. Is there anything that I need to know about, or is everybody okay? Alistair, can you just turn your sound on and let me know if there's anything?
Yeah, no, I think it's okay. There's been some questions about, can it be used on any device? Does it have to be a laptop or a computer, or can it be used on smartphones?
It can be used on smartphones. You download the app.
Okay, and then I added some notes on the accessibility kind of profile of Nearpod, so just for people to be aware of. Okay, so to support learning, and I know there are references to Nearpod on at least one of the modules on this site. The ETF hosts the Enhance and look after the Enhanced Digital Teaching Platform, and that's a site that has a number of modules on there to help you improve your digital skills. They're all bite-sized modules, very, very short, and I'm sure that Vikki will post the web address, or Sarah will post the web address into the chat pane for you. So the site hosts the EdTech site, which is what we're looking at here. It also does the Essential Digital Skills modules, CPD modules too. And the modules fit into a larger framework, the Digital Teaching Professional Framework, which has 7 categories. And the area that we would suggest you start in and look at is the accessibility and inclusion area. Regardless of whether you're creating content, it needs to be accessible, especially if you're going to deliver it through online learning. But there are other modules across the 7 elements that you would find useful, I'm sure, including things like assessment. You can use things like Nearpod for assessment, as you've just seen. So 2 modules.
Please note that the accessibility and inclusion modules are currently piloting the use of badges, and that what we learned from that before the 30th of March will inform our future practice. And all the modules are at 3 levels: exploring, adopting, and leading. And here are some of the modules that you might like to look at with reference to adapting content. As I've said, starting with the creative inclusive content principles.
Yeah, so it's just to let people know that one of the really nice things about the ETF training modules is the badging process that goes with it. Now, some people are fans of badges and some aren't fans of badges. Personally, I'm not a fan of badges, but actually what I really like is not so much that I get a badge, but that the badge process has been designed to really embed teaching and learning. So there are different stages. You get a badge for exploring. Well, you have an exploring badge, an adopting badge, or a leading badge. And then there are different levels within each of those. So you could have a 1-star badge, which means you basically look at the modules and the content. The 2-star badge is you look at the modules and the content and you reflect on how it would be used in your teaching. And that's the critical bit, that personal reflection. And then the 3-star badge is where you look at the module, you reflect on how you would use it, and you also upload a resource that is relevant to the way you have adapted your content, or perhaps led, if it's a leading badge, a policy document, or advice and guidance for colleagues, or resources for students if it's an adopting badge. So that's something where you have some real benefits from that. If we look at the next slide, the big why about why I think this is such a valuable thing is because you do, in order to get the 2-star badge, you do the practice. You go through, you look at the resources, you reflect on them, you're considering how they apply to you. There's metacognition there about how you learn, what you've learned, how you will apply what you've learned. And it's about growth mindset. It's really modeling exactly the kind of things we want our students to do. And on the next slide, the other element, when it comes to the badging, at the stars, the 2-star and the 3-star badges, where you're submitting a reflection or you're submitting a resource, you get feedback from other professionals. So not only are you doing the reflection, but you're also doing the community, building the community response. So you're having other professionals look at your work and tell you what they liked about it, and maybe even suggest some caveats. So, that's great that you've done that, but have you thought of this? And that's a really effective way of building that collaboration and all those really effective kind of teaching and learning tools into your own professional practice. Next slide. It's back to you, Sally.
Okay, so if you submit reflections or you submit resources that you produce, then and you agree for them to be shared online, then they will appear on what we're calling the awarded practice site. So people, once they've got their badge, they can share what they've done, they can share their change of practice, and this is already happening, and this is already on the EdTech site. You can go and have a look. And the idea is that we build a community and that we can discuss what people are doing and how they're changing practice and support each other through this. So please do take a look. The links are going up into the chat pane, I can see. This morning we did a session called Delivering Through a Virtual Classroom. You're currently in this one. There are 2 more tomorrow on supporting learners in VLEs and engaging learners in VLEs. Please do give ideas of other webinars that would support you. We're happy to take the ideas, and if we can, I'm sure we'll help them to make them happen. So let's just review. This is what we were going to cover today. We were looking at how to take existing content and how to quickly adapt it for online delivery. We've looked mainly at PowerPoint. We've looked at different tools within PowerPoint, and then how you can use your PowerPoint in other tools such as Nearpod to deliver structured lessons. We've also introduced you to the enhanced digital teaching platform and the badging process. And the awarded practice area where we can share and learn from others, learn from our peers. So if you'd like to ask questions of either Alistair or myself, our emails are on this slide. Please do get in touch, and we'll then be able to support you through that. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat pane. If you want to raise your hand in the participant list, the managed participant, the feedback status, raise your hand so that we know that a question is coming, because I know sometimes it can take a little bit to actually type your question in.
And if you've got a microphone handy and it's easier for you to speak than type, if you don't particularly like typing things in, then raise your hand and we'll give you the microphone. Silani raised a really interesting point. Is there a longer version? There's not a longer version of what we're doing now, and each of these modules is a short bite-sized module. But there's another kind of similar program called the Future Teacher program, which goes into hour-long sessions rather than the ETF modules are kind of 5 minutes. So it works well looking at the two of those together. I'll give you a link to the Future Teacher in the chat pane, and then you can see. In fact, there is one. There's a monthly webinar. There's one this coming Friday on collaborative learning, which is very relevant given online learning, where you're trying to do things a bit differently. So you can have a look at the Future Teacher resources, and it's just a really nice, almost gradient from ETF. Gives you really big range of things. It gives you tasters and some further resources to look at. And in many of the modules, some of those further resources to look at include links to the Future Teacher program and the content that goes alongside that.